Right, everyone, if you don't mind taking a seat, we'll crack on. We're running a few minutes behind, but our next speaker is going to be absolutely wonderful. She says she speaks very quickly, so just joking. So our last plenary session of this amazing conference, and it's an absolute huge pleasure to welcome Mary Freer to give this last address. Mary is the creator of Compassion Labs and a huge advocate of compassionate and caring leadership, spent her time working on that many years across the Commonwealth and in a number of jurisdictions in Australia and internationally. And if you're interested in hearing more, look at her appearance on TEDx and also, and this is a plug, no commission involved in this, her book, which was published last year, Compassion Revolution. So please give a big hand to Mary. Thank you very much.
Here's some money. Before I do anything, I'm going to pour a drink. Would anyone like one? My shout. I'm going to need that. That's great. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for staying. For all the people that, arranged their flights because they really wanted to be here for Don Berwick and you've got me instead. Many blessings. Thank you so much. So, first of all, before I do anything else, I want to acknowledge the traditional owners, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. I pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, and I recognise that this land was never ceded. Always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Well, my name is Mary Freer. My pronouns are she, her. I am really excited that I get this opportunity to be with you to close what has been a tremendous conference. I want to do a few things in the time that I've got, but the first thing I want to do is kind of frame how I want to use this 55 minutes that we have together. I want us to have a conversation. And so one of the things I've asked is that we can have roving mics and that partway through this conversation, I will pause and I will give you an opportunity to put up your hand so that someone can find you with a microphone. And maybe you have something that you want to add to this conversation that will move us forward. That's the proviso, because I really want to move us forward. Or you have a question, I would be delighted to attempt to answer any questions. And there are so many other people in the room that are probably far more qualified to answer a range of questions as well. So that's the structure of what we're going to do in our closing gig. And I'm going to introduce you to Compassion Revolution. Plenty of people in the room already know about Compassion Revolution and would call themselves a Compassion Revolutionary. That's what you're called when you belong to Compassion Revolution. And many people in the room would have been to our Compassion Revolution conferences. So I'm going to make sure we all understand kind of what Compassion Revolution is and what we do. But more importantly, I've got some kind of ideas about how we might move compassion forward across our healthcare ecosystem. And I also have been playing with a couple of different metaphors. And so I'm going to test one of my ideas out with you a bit later. Okay, there is a Japanese term some of you may have heard of, Ishigo Ishie. And it describes the irreplicable nature of every single encounter. The way that you and I will never meet in this way, in this place, in this time ever again. We will never meet in this configuration with one another again. Ishigo Ishie literally means one time, one encounter, this human moment, this present moment, with all that is delicious and brave and memorable and insufferable and rejuvenating and exhausting about this present moment. It will never happen again in this way. So that means we approach each moment and each encounter with a reverence and respect. We greet this moment fully and wholeheartedly. What I call we show up big for each other and for ourselves. And so I want to give us an opportunity to arrive, something I refer to in Compassion Labs and in my own life personally as saying hello to right now. So we've been doing a lot of rushing and moving from one workshop to the next and collecting ideas and trying to catch up with people that we haven't seen for years and all of these things and all of these ideas and everything that is happening, and we're ducking out for phone calls and emails are still coming in, and now is the time when we get to just be in this present moment. So what I want you to do, if you feel comfortable, I'd like you to sit up nice and straight in your chair with your feet on the floor, kind of hip width apart. And if you can, close your eyes. If closing your eyes feels strange, maybe you could have like a soft downward glance. So we're now kind of, there's a lot of stimulation in this room. So maybe we can have a soft downward glance and we can sit up nice and straight in our chair with our feet hip width apart and our hands rest on our lap. And we take a breath in and we take a breath out. And we notice what is happening in our body. What is happening in your body? Is it tense? Are you slightly apprehended by my invitation to sit still? What about if we lean in towards softening? I want us now to relax our shoulders. Maybe we do this by kind of rolling them or wobbling them or whatever you do. And your arms relax and your fingers relax. And you notice that your back is supported by the chair and your bottom is supported by the chair and your feet are supported by the floor. It feels good to be supported. It feels good to know that we're not going to fall anywhere. And I want to just breathe into that idea that I am supported. And as you breathe out, may other people feel supported too. And as you're breathing in and out, I want you to ask yourself this question. Are there assumptions that I might put aside for the next 50 minutes so that I might hear and feel and experience what is happening? And I want you to ask another question. What am I ready to bring to this moment or this conversation? What am I ready to bring to this conversation? And now open your eyes. And I want you to turn to someone and remind them that this is one time, one encounter. And you can do that by just saying, Ishi go, Ishi e. And you might like to look into their eyes, or maybe you tap your heart, or maybe you even give a little nod. But I want you to turn to someone and say, Ishi go, Ishi e. One time, one encounter. At the beginning of every year, I have a ritual. I absolutely love rituals. You'll come to know this about me. But my ritual is really simple. I choose a word or an idea that I commit to using over the next 12 months, kind of like a guide. Words can be like oars, on a boat. They help you get in the direction that you need to go. Sometimes words are like life rafts. We've often had a kind word that has felt like a life raft. Sometimes I choose a value that I want to grow over the year. One year I chose the word generosity. So here's a tip. If you decide that you're going to choose the word generosity to really meditate on for a year, don't tell everyone. Okay? I told people. And they were so willing to speed me along. I can't tell you how many times my friends said in cafes when it came time to split the check, "Oh, Mary will get this. She's practicing generosity." So it was helpful, but So the word became my daily meditation. How generous can I be? What would it be like if everyone in this negotiation came as their most generous self? It was really helpful, and I invited business leaders to play the game with me. In fact, it is the absolute secret to how I bootstrapped the first Compassion Revolution conference. Being generous had me listening more than I spoke. It had me sharing my ideas more openly, even when they were half-formed and I wasn't sure if people were just going to laugh me down. I started to understand generosity more intimately. And then one year, I chose a question. And my question was, what would love do? And I decided as an experiment that I would ask myself this question every time I had to make a decision. In my home life, my work life, my business negotiations, my self-care rituals. What would love do? And whenever I needed to weigh things up carefully, I would say, what would love do? I was more than a little scared to start with because I mistakenly thought that love would let me down, that love would sell me out. I thought that love was bad at business. I thought it was innumerate, illiterate, incomprehensibly foolish in the face of fact. But you know what? I was so wrong. And so many business leaders now are saying, like Tina Roth-Eisenberg, she keeps imagining a world where business start intentionally making the expression of love part of their business model. Wow, wouldn't that change the world? Many of us have had similar misleading beliefs as I did about love. We've had similar misleading beliefs about the place of compassion in the world of business. Compassion in the boardroom, compassion among the executive team. We might have been lured into thinking that somehow compassion was soft and fluffy. We thought maybe it belongs on the wards, but not at the meeting where we need to find a solution to ambulance ramping or funding cuts. And maybe you've been lured as well into thinking about compassion as soft and fluffy. I'm always reminded of the words of Tennessee Williams. Tennessee Williams said, "The world is a perpetually burning building, and what we must rescue every time is love." Our healthcare system is a burning building too. And what we must rescue every single time is love. So let me tell you what we do, like what is Compassion Revolution? Compassion Revolution is a movement that is building compassion across our healthcare ecosystem. Because I believe that right now, more than anything else, we need compassion. And that it's not this fluffy, soft idea of compassion. And that it's not about kittens. but compassion, I refer to compassion as muscular, right? Compassion is muscular, and Compassion Revolution is all about how we build that muscle. The activist Lee Boggs. Lee Boggs lived in Detroit. She was part of a movement called Detroit Summer. She was born in 1915. She lived for 100 years. She only died about 3 years ago. Or probably a bit more. COVID does this weird thing about dog years, doesn't it? She might have died like about 6 years ago or 7 years ago. Anyway, Lee Boggs, I learned a lot from Lee Boggs. And she had this idea that we can be aware that we cannot continue to live and work in the same way, but at the same time as we're aware of that, we feel immobilized because we can't imagine an alternative. And for many of us, that is kind of how we are right now. What is the alternative, and will the pandemic ever end? But the healthcare system that we're working in isn't immutable or fixed. It looks that way, but it isn't. It was built by people for a purpose, and it can be rebuilt. So this is what I'm doing. We're running labs, compassion labs. There would be people in the audience. Certainly there's a number of LHNs, LHDs that are represented here, where we've traveled to their services and we bring people together, we bring groups of people together, and we dive into this idea of what is a muscular sense of compassion? How do we build compassion competence across our hospital? What does it look like when our compassion literacy improves? What sort of improvements do we want to create when we become unapologetically tied to this idea that we are going to notice the distress that we're feeling and that others are feeling? We're going to set about to alleviate that. We also have a Compassion Revolution conference. We run the conference every year. This is our 4th year. It will be on the 16th and 17th of November in Melbourne. And I'm grateful to the Department for Health in Victoria for sponsoring us this year. It is an incredible event where we bring people together to really interrogate the topics that compassion is interested in. Colonization, racism, building trust, improving patient care, all the things that kind of fit into the remit of noticing distress. And then we have compassion collaboratives. And compassion collaboratives are where we kind of join with another organization and we form an idea of what would happen if Compassion Revolution arrived here. Kind of like in my head, it's like, the circus comes to town. I have this idea of, and we're building something with Alfred Health at the moment, Compassion Revolution comes to Alfred Health. We'll roll that out over the next year or so. We did interesting things, during the pandemic, we were able to partner with the Commission on Excellence in Innovation in Health in South Australia, and very, very quickly, we were able to build an app, really quickly, within 14 days or something. We were able to build an app because we, in South Australia, were not experiencing COVID in the ways that Victoria and New South Wales were. We were kind of waiting for the wave. It arrived, by the way. But people in different places, and we chose Far West New South Wales. Far West New South Wales were doing it really tough. And people were getting really tired, and they were really up at the coal front, face. And so healthcare workers in South Australia started sending messages of support to healthcare workers in that particular region. And so we had this great little app called Love from SA, and it was really simple. And it was so simple to build. I think the entire expense for getting the app up and delivering it and having people write messages was less than $12,000. So we do things that are kind of on the run. So hundreds of people working there in that service were suddenly getting these beautiful messages from people who were in South Australia saying, we see what you're doing and we're thinking of you, we care about you, keep going. So the premise of my presentation is really that compassion is our next critical step. We all know what the landscape looks like. We have staff shortages. We've got a pandemic and a flu season. We have a very thin labour market. We've got staff who are burnt out. Every time I run a lab now, there are people who are just coming back from what they call burnout leave, or there are people who aren't there because they're on burnout leave. They're telling me that they're tired of being exhausted. And there is this deepening realization that we are never going back to the way things were. And in many ways, I think that deserves a yeehaw, right? Because things weren't perfect before and we can build something much better. But that's the environment that we're in, and that's where compassion needs to be our next critical step. I was on Twitter just recently and I discovered a little conversation that was happening, and I thought, yeah, this is exactly where we are, and it's kind of humorous, so I want to share it with you. But I think it'll hit home, and I think it'll resonate. So somebody tweeted about NHS chiefs sending out a memo saying that immediate steps had to be taken. You know, the temperature's rising and COVID is rampant and you've got to get the patients out of those ambulances. And so no one should wait more than 30, if they had a 30-minute, kind of like no one in an ambulance more than 30 minutes. And it must be done despite the fact that they understood that it would put this extra burden on hospital staff. But the amusing part was the conversation that happened afterwards. So this guy said, hello, are you the reg on call for the car park? And this guy wrote back, no, I'm the reg on call for the corridor. I'm covering for the reg on call for the cupboard, but he's off with COVID. Is that like where we are? That's kind of where we are, isn't it? So how, in this environment, how can we introduce this idea of mighty compassion into our current landscape? The desire and the commitment to notice distress in ourselves and others and to set about alleviating it. And that is what compassion is. This is my go-to definition. And this is the definition that is most agreed on in the literature. And my, oh my, are a lot of people writing and researching about compassion. A sensitivity to distress in yourself and others with a commitment to try and alleviate and prevent it. So if you wondered what compassion was and you thought it was all about someone else, it is about someone else, but it's also about you. The thing that I find all the time when I'm working in healthcare is that people need so much compassion directed inward, and they think, oh, don't talk to me about compassion, I'm exhausted, I can't give anymore. But there's distress that we're feeling that we need to alleviate as well. So in my book that was kindly mentioned earlier for a fee, called Compassion Revolution, Start Now, you use what you have and keep going, I outlined these 4 steps to compassionate action. And they work at an individual level, but they actually work at an organizational and meta level as well. And I called it SUMA. And so I want to just introduce you to this idea of SUMA. And this is how I think about how we practice compassion. I'll be interested to know, I think other people will have even more interesting ideas about how we build on SUMA. Someone put their hand up in a presentation I gave a week ago and said, I think it is important that we think about sustainability. And I thought, that is really interesting, and that's a kind of idea and a metaphor around compassion that I'm really going to give some thought to. But anyway, the first thing is like showing up. Every day we do this, we practice coming back to the present moment because mindfulness trumps planning. Mindfulness trumps planning. Planning is really important. But if we're not here, if we're not actually here, there's so much that we do not see. There's so much that we do not comprehend. So many of you would remember if you did undergraduate psychology, the experiment where the people were passing the ball and you had the people in the white t-shirts, the people in the black. Does anyone know this experiment? The people in the black t-shirts, and you said I would show this to undergraduates. I'd say, now, What I want you to do is I want you to watch this little video, and all you have to do is count the number of times that the people in the white t-shirts pass the ball. And then I would say to the other half of the room, all I want you to do is count the number of times the people in the black t-shirt pass the ball. And people become fixated. And you can see them like marking the page every time they see a pass. Like they're not going to miss anything. And then you say to them at the end, you know, how many? And they'll argue about whether it was 22 or 23, and someone is convinced it's 24 and whatever. And then you say, did you see the gorilla? And people will say the gorilla, and then you replay the video, because now you've said the word gorilla. Now they're going to see the gorilla. And the gorilla literally walks out into the middle of the circle where they're passing the ball. And it's a big dude in a gorilla suit. And he walks out and he looks at the camera and he beats his chest, and then he leaves again. So it's not like he's in the corner of a pixelated screen. But people don't see that. And so there's a lot that we don't see. So showing up and being in this present moment is really, really important. We spend an awful lot of time being elsewhere, even when we're carving out strategic moves. But we can return to where we are. And this is this idea that I introduced at the beginning around showing up big. You know when you're with someone and they're really there, when they really show up big for you, and they're right there with you, you know what that's like? It's a marvelous feeling. Most of the people I speak to in healthcare tell me that they rarely or never spend 5 minutes of their day just sitting and letting their body recharge. Connecting to the body that they have and being present. It's not until they get home and it's like my shoulders like reach my ears, and I get home and I'm so thirsty because I haven't drunk all day and because I didn't want to have to pee, you know, and during COVID because I didn't want to take off my PPE, and then I get home and the dog comes out and I feel like, oh, I could kick the dog, and you know, and then it's like, what are we going to have for dinner? And that tips you over the edge. Keeping compassion at the very center of our practice will help us become more resilient to stress and burnout. We actually find our work more inspiring. The second thing is understand. And there's a Nigerian post-activist thinker and public intellectual that I have just become really fascinated with. And his name is Bayo Akomolafe. And what Bayo says is, the times are urgent, we must slow down. The times are urgent, we must slow down. We must create space to develop an understanding of the way forward. What are we going to make when we've composted the current health system, right? When we've taken all the juice and goodness and all the things that are in it now that we appreciate and love and let the rest die, what are we going to create? And you know, Lee Boggs, she, at the age of 98, she said, and this is pre-pandemic, she's 98, she's such an intellectual. She said, the opportunity that we now have to reimagine everything, to reimagine work, to think of it as productive not only of things, but of well-being, to think of governance in a different way, to think of education in a different way. What an opportunity. What a time to be alive. We're not only being, but we're non-being and becoming. I would say we are hungry for solutions, and people have said that to me. I'm really looking for an answer. You know, I'm going here and I'm going there. Be careful. A solution is often a problem's way of masking the desire for continuity. A quick fix, a silver bullet, paper over the cracks, slow down. You know, the times are urgent, we must slow down. And I don't mean slow down as in, you know, we'll get to the same destination, but we're going to go really slowly. I don't mean that. I mean pause and let's think about what is next. Strategy isn't enough. We need to build a belief that people will, that will provoke deliberate action. That's the ultimate advantage that we have in the world right now in this moment. This is a time for listening. Maybe a team member confides in you that they think they're the only one that's not making the grade. And as you listen, maybe you become aware there's a pattern of distress. What are the local and colonial structures? What are the organisational systems that are feeding into this distress? This is what it means to build understanding. If the new is coming out of the familiar, it turns into perpetuation. I find that really, really powerful. Let me just go back. Move closer is the third. Our organisations are above all collectives of human hopes, aspirations and foibles, and we've got to nurture them in that way. Tight control is a thing of the past. The pandemic has given us this magic moment to move in closer and to see what is really happening. Our people are feeling broken, and somehow they're also wondering what on earth comes next. This is when we need to be as creative as possible and give them ways of connecting with each other and with hope and with ideas and imagination and innovation. When we see distress, we often feel this urge to turn away. But when we move closer, we kind of touch in. So maybe you notice distress in your team or in your organisation, and it reminds you of what it was like for you when you were a junior. You suddenly remember the tight knot that you would feel in your throat. And so compassion has us leaning in and saying, how can I help? What would really help right now? And finally, act, because compassion is a verb. Change isn't going to happen like a shot out of a pistol. Transformation is not like about big moves. And we heard that this morning about daily habits and rituals and the power of 1,000 small moves. When Keynote talked about, yesterday, when Keynote reminded us that yesterday that he told this story about a CEO making the phone call to the patient at risk of loneliness. Transformation is not only about the big moves. Seeing the human side of our business and our work as messy and unpredictable is really short-sighted. This is when we step forward with our teams and our patients and our community and our consumers, and we start to make a plan. But we must act on seeing what is happening, on understanding what needs fixing. We must act. The chaos will not settle. The past won't return. The past won't return. We need to build something new. I want us to have an opportunity now, rather than waiting to the end. I want us to have an opportunity for some questions or some comments. And then I want to come back and talk to you about two metaphors that have taken me by surprise. One is the idea of titration, and the other is the idea of mycelium. And I've used those two ideas to create a thing that I want to tell you about. But first, I'm interested in what you want to tell us about. So does anyone have a question or a comment? We've got hands up. Okay, we just let our mic runners find you. Put your hand up really big. I would love to hear from you. Hello.
Hello, this is gorgeous. Go bold. You're talking about compassion revolution, and I look to the UK, and the greatest compassion that can be shown to any healthcare worker today is a no-fault system.
Yes.
And this is a new horizon, it's a new day, and never in the history of humankind has so much been owed by so many to so few. And I've heard about all these health care workers, they're brought to their knees. But why, oh why, is there not more talk about it? Because the human public sentiment is there. And we're on the cusp of something great. I had to go through the tort system when I lost my little girl, and I am the outsider, the mum on a mission, and I came here to tell her story. and I've never had such compassion and care. I spoke up at the restorative responses after healthcare harm. And I drank a lot of wine last night with Joe, Graham and Caroline, and we broke bread. And what we need is a no-fault system, and we need a restorative response after healthcare harm. Thank you.
Yes, we do. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you. Do we have another question? Comment? Yes, we have one in the middle there. Who will be next, I wonder? Hello.
Hi, Mary.
Oh, hello, Lynette. Hi.
I'm really curious. I love Suma, and I think that really speaks to us as individuals. But I'm very curious about compassionate systems. It's one thing to say, you know, I can be compassionate, you know, you can be compassionate, but how do we facilitate that so everyone can be top form in compassion within our organisations?
Yeah, well, thank you for that, Lynette. And it was a joy for me to spend some time at Darling Downs where you are, and to be with your executive team and some of your managers. What seems like ages ago, but was probably not. Yes. Well, what I would say, so on one hand, I see the total importance of like engaging our executive team and our leadership and our boards, but sometimes that just isn't possible, you know, and there are so many leaders within organisations like yourself, Lynette, who are agitating for something to change and are willing to kind of show up and start this ripple effect around compassion. Compassion is incredibly contagious. Once we start to bring these ideas and people see this, they start to kind of catch on. But there are systems that must be challenged. And so compassion is not only about doing good things and bringing love and kindness and goodwill and care and attention to distress, but sometimes compassion is really about naming things that are unjust and unfair. If you can, we're doing experimenting at the moment about what happens when organisations invite Compassion Revolution to come in. And then we look at how we can spread ideas about compassion across organisations, how we can do it at every level, and what that would mean. Like at the moment, people are talking to me about patient and consumer complaints that are just getting more complex and going through the roof. And there's a whole lot I could kind of say about that. But this idea of how might we approach that particular problem with a lot of compassion and a lot of heart, which doesn't mean that we say it's all on. We still have a commitment to zero tolerance, but we frame it and we enact it in a different way. And we start to understand what other people, what they're experiencing and where they're coming from. Do I have a question here? Yeah. Was that useful? Yeah, and we'll Zoom soon. I'd love to talk to you more.
Mary, this is a question from Terry Wild, who's a quality improvement advocate and
Hi,
patient
Terry.
partner online. And Terry says, in my work as a patient partner in healthcare QI, I've had to learn the importance of self-compassion and care.
Yeah, Terry, I'm so glad you've learnt that. We've all got to learn it. That's the thing that comes up the most when I'm in organisations running compassion labs. And the critical voice that sits on our shoulder, and, you know, like as human beings, that one of the things we do better than everything else is we ruminate and we criticise and we measure ourselves up continually against other people. So we have this story that runs in our head about not being good enough, not being as good as, being overlooked, whatever it is. And there's work that we can do, which is just like turning the volume down on that voice. Kristen Neff is a researcher and writer, probably the premium researcher and writer in the area of Compassion Revolution. Always worth having a look at her work. She's even produced an index of self-compassion so we can have a look at how compassionate we are to ourselves. Being compassionate to ourselves, though, isn't like about letting ourselves off the hook. The thing about being really compassionate towards ourselves is like, you know how we all have someone in our life, when we completely stuff up, we know we won't ring them. Because when we ring them, they're going to say something like, you did what? Again? oh my God, I can't believe you keep doing this, right? And so we think, don't dial them. Sometimes we're that person. And when we're that person to ourselves, we don't want to reflect on where we've gone wrong. When we stuff it up at the meeting and we don't get what we were aiming for, we come out and it's like, I don't want to reflect because I don't want to beat myself up. So it's much easier for me to say, yeah, well, the chair was just useless. If only they'd pulled us all in line, or I didn't get my reading materials beforehand, or this organisation is like full of dinosaurs, rather than us looking to ourselves with a soft heart and saying, yeah, I kind of went in there with expectations, and maybe if I think this through, how would I do it again without going, you are so crazy stupid? Yes, thank you. You've got the mic. And we've got the mic there as well. I think we're going there. Are we going there or here? We're going here, but it's not working.
Oh, okay.
It's working.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. It's really quite, it's really interesting, and it was really quite touching, actually. I just have a quick comment and a question, if I may. On one hand, I don't know how to choose my words very carefully, so please,
No, don't.
I don't want it to come out the wrong way. It was slightly disheartening to see that we live in a world and maybe work in an environment or even a culture where we now have to teach kindness and kindness, and we have to teach compassion, to arguably things that make us who we are as humans, and it's supposed to come naturally to us. But it's certainly very encouraging that we now do talk about it, and we have solutions to this maybe chronic problem that we're all facing. So thank you for that. I'm just wondering, what are your thoughts about how upstream do we have to do this? How upstream do we have to go to do this? Is it too late to do this for professionals who are currently in the system, or how, where do we need to go to sort of to the roots of where this problem is?
Thank you. Thank you for your comment and your question. So I'm not going to do the upstream just yet. I'm going to do that second. First, I'm going to do the one about how it feels disheartening. I'm so glad I can remember what you said. I had COVID 9 weeks ago, and up until last week, my cognitive recall was completely shot. So I'm glad I'm recovering. The thing is, people, when we do compassion labs in organisations, oftentimes people think that their manager is inviting them to come because they're not compassionate. Or they think, well, I don't have to go because I am compassionate. We're not really teaching people how to be compassionate. We are, it is the essence of who we are as humans. I think we're born with, a compassionate heart. Small children, they've done plenty of research where small children really want to help. They don't have to be coached to want to lend a hand when they see someone drop something or someone distressed. What we're doing is just saying, how are we going to bring it alive, right? How are we going to bring this alive in the organisation when there are so many things that you feel are getting in the way of you really being able to express that? Now, the second one is how upstream. I don't think it's ever too late for the people who are in the organisation. What I see when I travel around are just a whole lot of healthcare workers who really, really want to do their best. I mean, we've seen that expressed over the last 2 years. They've bent over backwards. They've worked so hard. They're really, really tired. Any amount of kind of love and compassion that we bring into the system that they benefit from is a beautiful thing. And then as we start to build our organisation with compassion at the heart, then that culture really flourishes. So I'm not writing anyone off. But, that's me. I'm not writing anyone off. Yeah, I think we had one up. Do we have one there? I just want to take that one before we come down.
Hi, Mary. It's Kate here.
Hi, Kate. Oh, hi, Kate.
Hi. I'm just thinking, as you know, I know about your work and I've been to your events, and I've often asked you, where is the consumer in the generation of compassion in healthcare? And if it's acknowledged that consumers are sometimes a source of compassionate action in healthcare, is it still the case that healthcare falls short of supporting that because it feels improper to expect a person who is ill also to be compassionate? And does that mean that consumers are missing out on being part of this?
That's a beautiful question that I would only ever expect from Kate Bowles. So thank you so much. I agree with you. I do think we miss so many opportunities to give consumers a voice to be able to express care and compassion. I sat on a panel once next to a consumer advocate at a healthcare service, and we were talking about doctor burnout, and she put up her hand and she said, "Do you think I don't know that doctors are burning out?" Because they were working out of social. Do you think that we don't know? Do you think that patients and consumers don't notice when there's bad behaviour in hospitals? Like, we can be part of the solution as well. So I think that's absolutely right. I think one of the reasons that I think compassion doesn't sometimes flourish in organisations, and this might speak to the consumer voice as well, that we don't give people enough opportunities that are easy for them to express it. You know, like we don't make it easy. Like, is there a card that if you have a hospital stay, someone in your family can grab it and it just says, "I so appreciate you." Or like the cards that I've been giving out recently, "Your heart is a shining star," and you just write on the back. Like, we give people an opportunity to tell us when we're not getting it right, but I think people also want to express love and compassion. And the consumer voice is what is going to help us build the next iteration of our healthcare system, I believe. Up the back.
Is it working?
It's working.
Oh, it's working.
Okay, sorry. Mary, you made a comment early in your presentation around compassion isn't soft and fluffy, it's muscular. And then when there was a question not long ago, you responded around, come back to yourself with a soft heart. Mm-hmm. And I'm just wondering, do we still live in a world where muscular and strong, or muscular, is more powerful than soft and fluffy?
Okay, I'll tell you what I mean. Thank you for the question. Good question. This is what I mean. When I say, when people often think compassion is like, they confuse it with kindness. Now, when I'm about to give you what I think is the difference between kindness and compassion, and please don't go away thinking that I don't appreciate kindness and celebrate kindness. I think we should have more random acts of kindness. I think we should have carefully planned acts of kindness. I think any kindness we can have is great. But kindness doesn't necessarily speak to the distress that people are feeling. If I leave flowers on your door, it doesn't necessarily alleviate the distress you're feeling if your distress is that no one ever comes to see you, or that you wish that someone would grab some shopping, or whatever it is. This is a trivial kind of definition. And when I say muscular, I mean you've got to work it, you've got to build it up, and you can turn to others and yourself with softness because compassion is a muscle that you're building. And this is kind of how it plays out in my life. You do the kind of work and you do the reflection, and then one day you're in a situation and you notice that you don't want to explode. Like that you actually feel really soft towards someone and you approach it really differently. So I kind of like, I can balance the muscular and the soft together. But yeah, we live in a world that says like muscular stroke steroids, really. Don't we? So I take your point. Hello.
Hi, my name's Robin. I just wanted to thank you very much for everything you've said so far. I just wanted to sort of think a little bit about some of the things you're talking about, but also in terms of the culture of our industry.
Yeah.
Because care is a huge responsibility.
Huge.
And therefore, associated with that, there's a very strong imperative to be right, or as right as you can, as much of the time as you can. It's also a bit of an ecosystem that also involves the patients and the carers. But I think sometimes one of the enemies of compassion is fear.
Fear?
Yes.
Fear, yeah.
And fear, particularly sometimes that maybe we might not be enough, or that the things aren't right for whatever reason, and therefore don't show weakness. But the flip side of that is acknowledgement and acceptance and some level of validation and therefore trust, because it's a self-reinforcing process, I think. And so it's also, I'm just thinking that in addressing or bringing in compassion, or kinship circle, like Derek said in his talk, there's something about a shared understanding and sense-making of appreciating the fear that may be there, or the distress, or whatever it is, because these things are there, and just validating and acknowledging that, because people respond sometimes very much to the extent they're either validated or acknowledged or not acknowledged.
So important, isn't it? Yeah, good point. So important that we acknowledge. And yeah, fear is, I think, yeah, fear is the enemy, one of the enemies of compassion. Fear is a liar also, but yeah, I think I agree with you. Okay, maybe we have one last one. Where is it? Or do we have the mic in two hands? We have one over here. Hello.
Hi, my name's Todd.
Hi, Todd.
Hello. I think a few ways we can think about bringing compassion into the workplace and teaching people. One is when we have stuff going on ourselves, to share that with people, and which is hard and scary, but you know, like I had some stuff going on earlier in the year. I was working extra shifts and not making decisions as well as I would like, and I just told people that's exactly what's going on. This is going on in my life, and I'm not thinking as clearly as I can, so I need help making these decisions. And that helps show people that it's okay to admit that and ask for help.
Yes.
And when our trainees and colleagues are having struggles, to give them the space to say what's going on with them.
Yeah.
And also with patients. And often we have tired staff who refer to people as difficult patients and try to avoid them. And I think to try to reframe that in those discussions just by asking what's going on with them, what's making them feel more anxious, and helping people look past the behavior at what's underlying it.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, I agree with you, 100%. Are we good to close off on questions? We have no mics out in the room. Correct? Okay, good. Thank you for your comments and questions. I appreciate them a lot. I want to now introduce, in this last little bit of time, we may not get another round for questions, but I want to introduce, I've been thinking about two things. One thing I've been thinking about is titration. I've been thinking about how do you titrate compassion. Bear with me, this is like how I think and create things. So I've been thinking about how, basically what I'm coming up against is that in the healthcare system, at the moment, it's like we can't release people for a day. And lots of LHNs and LHDs and organisations book labs, and then it's like, we can't do it until October, and then can we make it next year? And then, no, we'll have to wait another year. And so people are like waiting and not being able to be released. And sometimes we can't even, healthcare services feel like can't even release people for 2 hours. To do something kind of online. So I've been thinking about how do you take like a small dose of something powerful and deliver it into this ecosystem. So that's one idea I've been having. The other is around mycelium. And mycelium is so when we see mushrooms are actually just the fruit of a vast network underground called mycelium. And the network, and it's everywhere, it's massive. And the network delivers nutrients and delivers from one plant to another and one tree to another in its species, the nutrients and the care that it needs. So plants are kind of talking to each other and using this mycelium network to send to others the sort of nutrients that they need. So then I thought, how do I bring like this idea of like smaller dose mycorrhizal or mycelium network and turn this in to something that might make sense for kind of where we are at the moment in healthcare. And so what I've come up with is this idea of Lightwell. So Lightwell is a hybrid, asynchronous and real-time online means of connection across space. And so it's an app and it's a platform. So it's a place where people can show up and learn, and they can share fresh ideas with a warm community of practice. So this is my Mycelium idea. And where people can expect really great content and creative facilitation, and a theme, and a different theme every month. So no matter where you decide to come into Lightwell, there would be a theme that would, I'm sorry, you probably can't really kind of get into the detail of that, so don't sweat. But so this idea of like, how do we build something where people feel seen and connected, that's easy and beautiful, and that's little and often, okay, and gives this sense of we see you. And so I've been thinking about how do you have an online app environment, but you also combine it with real life coaching, and where you can jump on a Zoom call and actually be with real life humans, and you know that the app isn't kind of run by AI. So anyone who's interested in experimenting with this Lightwell idea, this asynchronous real-time app and platform, I would love to hear from you. And I would love to kind of take that further. We're just at the build stage, and to push that out across a jurisdiction or an organization. So that's Lightwell. Okay, I want now, to remind you that Compassion Revolution conference is 16th and 17th of November in Melbourne, and you can find all the details at compassionrevolution.care. But lastly, I want to leave you with something. When I published my book last year, and I tagged it, "Start now, use what you have, keep going," some people thought that with the title, what I meant was kind of just use whatever you've got, pull your socks up, don't stop, keep going. And I actually didn't mean that at all. So I created a thing. So if you come across the book, inside the book is a QR code. And the QR code travels with the book, and I call it the traveling prayer. And this is what I did, and this is what I want to give to you. At the last Compassion Revolution conference, where we launched the book, I said to the audience of healthcare, clinicians, practitioners, executives, leaders, and some may even be in this room that feature on this recording. I said to them, if someone that you cared about, like your colleague, called you and said, "I don't think I can start now. I don't think what I have is enough for me to be able to do this thing that I have to do. And quite frankly, I don't think I can keep going," then what would you say to them? So if you're in the audience and you feel like this feels too big at the moment in healthcare, and it feels like maybe I can't keep going, or there are people I know who can't keep going, I want you to imagine, and again, you can close your eyes if you want to, I want you, as you listen to this recording that was made by your colleagues, imagine that you had made the phone call and you had told them, "I don't think I can keep going. I don't think I have what I need to build this compassion revolution." This is what they would say to you. I'm not getting volume.
You're right on time. You are just what I have been waiting for.
You are perfect right as you are.
Everything you need is right within you now.
It's okay if you need to lie down today. Tomorrow could be different.
You don't need to do it all. You just need to be your wonderful self.
You're loved and you're enough.
Know that you're always loved.
Stretch out your hand and receive the world's wide gift of joy, appreciation, and beauty.
Just be you in the world. Be okay to be yourself.
Be you. That is just who you and us need you to be.
Listen to the beat of your heart. It's saying love, love, love. We can see the amazing things you bring into the world. Just keep going.
How you are now is okay. What's going on now hurts, it sucks, but you matter.
Darling heart, I have so much faith in you. You have everything in your hands to create the world that you imagine beyond your wildest dreams. Everything that you need will come to you just as you need it. You are powerful beyond measure. I love you so much beyond measure.
Breathe, be still, listen. The answer will come, and when you're ready, I'll meet you back on the dance floor.
If you need time, just be. I love you then, always. Just be.
You have everything you need inside of you. I love you. I'm here for you for whatever you need, however you need it, and whenever you need it.
I see you, and you are perfect.
You make a difference every single day, and it's okay to pause and take a breath. Every single day.
You are the stuff of stars. You are infinite. You belong. You are everywhere you should be. You can stop. You can wait. You are of the universe.
You are safe. You are secure. Everyone loves you in different ways.
Whether it's one step backwards or two steps forwards, I'm here to cha-cha with you all the way.
Whatever your best is, in whatever capacity, it will always be enough.
I'm here for you. It's okay to be sad. Just be you.
I believe in you. I believe in you.
Just know that you are loved for all that you are, all that you have been, and all that you will be.
You are loved always. Keep doing what you are doing and stay on the journey.
You, my dear friend, you are so extraordinary. In all of the world, there is no one more worthy of your attention and your love and your care. My prayer for you, my meditation, my wish is that you find the courage and the audacity, the strength and the good humor, the willingness and the tenacity to hold hope close, to carry the blessing of possibility with you wherever you go, so that even in the most difficult times, you can turn toward her and hear the whisper. Right now, it's like this, but it won't always be like this. Start now. Use what you have. Keep going. Keep going.
Thank you. Well, I'm finished. We have no time for questions. Are you doing a closing or are we just... I don't have anything else.
Thank you very much, Mary. That was inspiring and just a wonderful way to finish this meeting. And can I say, look, I'm Jim Mackey. I'm the Acting Chief Executive of the Clinical Excellence Commission here in New South Wales, and we've been the host strategic partner for this event. And I just want to reflect on the journey that's been, because when I took on this job in December last year, I didn't realise what we're in for. And there have been many times in the last 6 or 8 months that I didn't think we'd be here because of everything that was going on in the world and all the challenges we were facing in our systems. But because of a remarkable lot of people, we've made it. And I want to just thank a few people before I hand over this torch to Safer Care, well, I'm going to get it to work in a minute, to Safer Care Victoria for the next challenge. And firstly, the program planning and committee, who've done an amazing job getting this all together, in particular from my organisation, Trish Brad. Also, I'd like to thank many of our CEC staff who've helped Trish in this endeavour, and also those people who volunteered, gave up their time free of charge to come here and help with the conference. Many of those were in green shirts, particularly on Sunday, but also through today and yesterday, and so I want to speak special thanks to them. To those of you who've travelled halfway around the world or from not too far, really want to thank you for making the effort to share the learnings and your expertise and knowledge with all of us here today. And finally, to everyone here, it's really congratulations to you because you've demonstrated leadership. And we heard about it in the very first session of this meeting on Sunday. Ashley spoke about leadership being an invitation to collaborate, and you've faced the challenges of being here in a difficult environment, and come here in numbers that I confess, I didn't think we'd get, but and likewise to the people online. So thank you very much. You are the champions. And so with this, I'm going to relight the torch and hand it over to Mike from Safer Care Victoria to invite you all to the next meeting.
Thank you. Jim, thanks for that. It's a familiar looking torch, and just like the real ones, doesn't work. That's brilliant. Thank you, Jim, and for all your team for everything you've done. It's amazing. I'm going to just say a couple of things. We're going to finish in 3 minutes. We've got a very short video, 45 seconds to show at the end of that time. I just want to go back to the opening plenary, the first keynote talk, and just quote something which has been very meaningful to me, and I would hope that each one of you will go away from this fantastic 3 days with something that's really important to you as well. And it was the poem by Paul Anthony entitled No Time to Think. And if you've heard it before, that's great, but otherwise, I'm just going to pull a few lines from it, not the whole thing. No time to think, no time for dreams, no time for anything, it seems. No time to sit, no time to stand, no time to shake you by the hand. No time to stop, no time to blink. But most of all, no time to think. And the one huge thing I think I've taken away from 3 days is I've had time to think. It's been absolutely brilliant. I've loved meeting people, I've loved making connections, but most of all for me is that time to think. So what I'm going to take away from this is I need to make that time to think for myself, but also for the people in my organization. They need time to think as well. I need to create that time so we're not back in the office sitting in front of Teams meetings and our emails, but we have time on, or whatever it's going to be, Wednesday afternoon, we should be team thinking time, something along those lines. So that's my takeaway. I don't know what your takeaway is going to be, but I'm just thinking too, as we go forward to Melbourne, maybe we can start Melbourne with some of the learnings from Sydney and what we've done with those learnings over the next year. Maybe that'll be quite an interesting thing to do, and sharing some of those experiences together as a way of networking too. So 30th of October next year, get it in your diary now, block it out, 3 days, it's going to be absolutely amazing. Sydney's been fantastic, Melbourne will build on that and we'll do some great things from there. Please do come, and I promise you it'll be absolutely amazing. Can we roll the short video, please? Thank you. On behalf of Safer Care, IHO BMJ, safe travels home. See you next year. Thank you all.